When you onboarded the DMARC Manager, you were instructed to publish a DMARC record in the DNS of your domains. In this record, you have declared a policy and an email address to send your DMARC reports to the DMARC Manager. To visualize these reports via the DMARC Manager application, you will need to access the Aggregate Reports. To do so, click on the following icons: Reports and Aggregate Reports. This will take you to the reporting of all the domains present in this space. You may now filter on a specific period. Last 7 days, based on the last 7 calendar days, excluding today's date as it's not yet a complete date of reporting. Last 30 or 60 days, based on this last 30, 60 calendar days. Again, we are excluding today's date as it's not yet a complete reporting date. And the 30-day volume, it is based on 30 complete days of reporting, but it can still mean that XMLs are being received and processed. You may also select a custom range. However, this is dependent on your license. For example, for a basic license, you've got 3 months of data history. For a plus license, you've got a year of data history. For an enterprise license, you've got over a year of data history. If you like to focus on a specific domain, you type the domain in the box and then you select it from the drop-down menu. If the domain you would like to focus on is not present in the drop-down menu, it means it's not in this specific space. Once selected, you click on Apply and the filtered aggregate reports will show on screen. In the bar above the first graphic, you will find the numbers of senders detected in the filtered data, the volumes of emails reported over the reported time frame, and the inbox placements of your email. The DMARC compliance score, if you hover over the circle, you'll see the percentage of DMARC alignment. So this is the full alignment, the DKIM-only alignment, the SPF alignment, and where there's no alignment. Next to that, you also find the SPF alignment and DKIM alignment score. Where it's a dark green, it's a strict alignment. And the lighter shade of green is for a relaxed alignment. You'll have the same for DKIM. You've got an SPF unaligned score, which is in amber. And last but not least, a fail. We classify the senders in 3 different categories: identified senders, forwarders unaligned, and threat unknown. Looking at the identified senders, any senders appearing under the identified sender category are most likely legitimate senders for your organization. In the forwarder category, reports identified automated third-party mail servers that receive emails from your domains and redirect them to a new destination. These senders will typically show a 0% SPF pass rate because the forwarding server is not listed in your SPF record, but maintain a valid DKIM pass rate. In the same category, you will also find unaligned traffic. These senders will show a very low level of DMARC compliance and may be legitimate traffic that needs to be made fully DMARC compliant. Our last category, threat unknown, is where you will find servers that could not be automatically identified. This is typically due to the senders of email being illegitimate spoof or legitimate but not yet recognized by our database. In each of these categories, you will find by default access to an easy reporting view where you can check the raw authentication result for SPF and DKIM and also the DMARC alignment. If you wish to go more in depth in this report, you can activate the expert view. This will give you full view of all the information available in XML's reports and enriched information. So how do you read the data in EasyView? If we analyze in more details the information on screen, we can see that the emails are being sent from dmarcadvisor.com, and we have about over 4,000 emails reported for this period of time. The email has landed in the inbox Why? Is because the DMARC compliance is a pass. Why? Why is it a pass? First of all, let's look at SPF. So the email is still sent from dmarkadvisor.com. It uses the following IP to transit. The IP address is present in the SPF record published on dmarkadvisor.com. So therefore, you will get a raw SPF pass. The second condition for DMARC is that there is a alignment between the sending domain and the SPF domain in this case. So to do that, we compared dmarkadvisor.com, which is a sending domain, with the SPF domain, which is also dmarkadvisor.com. There is a link between those two. Therefore, we have a pass. Now let's look at DKIM. Once again, the email is being sent from dmarkadvisor.com. It uses the selector Safe 2026 published in the DNS of dmarkadvisor.com. The private key and the public keys are a match. The email is not being altered during transit. Therefore, we've got a raw DKIM pass. Now we compared the DKIM domain with the sending domain. So it's dmarkadvisor compared with dmarkadvisor.com. We can see that there is a link. Therefore, we have a pass. This is a very good example of a full alignment. Now let's look at a different type of alignment. So again, here we've got traffic from Amazon SaaS that is being sent from dmarkadvisor.com with a DMARC alignment of 100% with only DKIM. Looking at the data, the emails are being sent from dmarkadvisor.com. They are using the following selector that is published in the DNS of dmarkadvisor.com. The private and the public key are a match. There's no alteration of the email during its transit. Therefore, we've got a pass. Seeing there's a link between dmarkadvisor, the sending domain, and the DKIM domain, which is also dmarkadvisor.com, we now have a pass here. If now we look at the SPF score, the emails are still sent from dmarkadvisor.com. It uses these IPs. When checking the SPF record published on this domain, we can find those IP address in that record. Therefore, we get a pass. However, the second condition of DMARC is there should be a link between the two domains used. Seeing that the sending domain is dmarkadvisor.com and the SPF domain is still with the suppliers, there is no link. Therefore, you'll get a fail. So this is a very good example of a DKIM-only alignment. The improvement that we could suggest here is also to implement the SPF alignment. Here we're going to show you a DMARC alignment with SPF only. So emails are being sent from DMARC Advisor. The IP address referenced in the report are present in the SPF record published on dmarkadvisor.com. Therefore, we get a pass. There is a link between the sending domain and the SPF domain. Therefore, we have a DMARC SPF pass. Okay, if we look at DKIM, the emails are being sent from dmarkadvisor.com. It uses the selector that is present in the DNS of dmarkadvisor.com. Unfortunately, the raw DKIM result is a fail. Why? Public key doesn't match the private key. The selector is not present in the DNS, or there's a alteration of the message during transit, and therefore we have a fail. The second condition is actually not checked. Why? Because the first of the two DMARC requirements is a fail. So if you now want to investigate this further, you can always click on these buttons, and this will then check if the selector is valid in your DNS, and you can see that there is no DKIM record found in the DNS of dmarkadvisor.com. However, despite DKIM failing, you've got an SPF DMARC pass. Should you decide to go to a policy of reject with your domain like dmarkadvisor.com, the email will arrive at its first destination. If the email is then forwarded, you may have issue because there's no DKIM. So it is important in this case to contact the suppliers and also implement DKIM. This is an example where the traffic is DMARC on a line. Looking at this into more details, we can see that, for example, the emails are being sent from dmarkadvisor.com. The IPs that are used are present in the SPF record published on this domain. Therefore, we have a raw pass. However, when we look at the SPF domain with the DMARC domain, we have a not a match. Therefore, it is a fail. Same applies to DKIM, so it is sent from dmarkadvisor.com. It uses this selector that is present in the DNS of this domain. Public key matches the private key, therefore it's passed. However, there is no link between the DKIM domain and the sending domain. Therefore, we have a fail result. And overall, we've got a DMARC fail, which leads to a DMARC compliance of 0%. If you face these kinds of scenario, remember that you can always click on this button to get more information on how you should, on what you should consider doing to have an SPF alignment or a DKIM alignment, and we will automatically revert to documentation that is available from the sender's website. So this is how you analyze, in a nutshell, the DMARC data that you receive on a daily basis. Please remember that our support team is available or at your disposal should you require any further assistance regarding any of the features available in the DMARC Manager application.